Hello, everyone. It's Jaden here for Student Pages. Hope you're all doing well once again. Today, we are here with an incredible talent. We have Nick Brooks, a writer, music creator, and a multimedia genius. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, my man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely my pleasure. So, I think we should get started with the fact that you are an award-winning writer. Straight off the bat, what drew you to literacy?
Man, initially it was teaching. I was teaching in DC where I'm from. I was teaching kids, 5 and 6 year olds, kindergarten, first grade. Very quickly noticed that a lot of the books that we were using to teach the kids, there were two things. One, they weren't culturally responsive, right? They didn't have characters that looked like my kids. They didn't feature our community. They weren't talking about stories and things that mattered to my students. So it was hard for them to make text to self connections. The other thing was the charter network that I worked at, they had particular vocabulary that they wanted the students to be using, but they weren't teaching, particularly the younger kids, what the vocabulary meant. So words like thoughtfulness or attentiveness, hard work, like all of these great things, grit, right? But a 5 year old doesn't know what grit means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it was about attacking that, right? How do I start to write books that break down these words in a way that kids can understand? And then how do I also put in characters and themes and community landmarks that they recognize so that they're easier for them to make text to self connections. And that was initially what drew me into writing, children's books. I started writing those, I self-published, ended up getting those books in my charter network all across the country, and it kind of just grew from there. That went to film, and then film led me back to writing novels and so on and so forth.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, straight on from that, as you've just mentioned there, you're also involved in film, in music as well. How did you get into that wider industry? What drew you to that as well?
Yeah, well, for film, initially it was a film called Fruitvale Station by a guy
Mhm.
named Ryan Coogler, right? Who I'm sure you've heard of by
Oh
now.
yeah, of course. Black Panther. Yeah.
At that time, it was just Fruitvale Station. That was all he had, and recognized the genius in that movie. Went on to look him up and saw his path. I've always been a huge movie buff, like huge movie fan. I think it was something about the way he spoke, the way he carried himself that like resonated with me, right? Again, going back to representation. And it made me feel like, oh, maybe I can make movies too. I saw what his path was. He went to grad school. He studied film. Excuse me. And so I did the same thing. I went to grad school, studied film, and the very first film I made, Hoop Dreaming, not only got me in film school, but it got me a full ride from George Lucas. I got into a bunch of film festivals. And for me, when things like that start to line up, when you do a thing, particularly for the first time, and see that type of success with it, it lets me know, okay, I'm doing something. This is a path I should be exploring. Whether this is gonna take me to the end goal or not, this is definitely a way I should be exploring. So yeah, it was literally Fruitvale Station is what again I always been a movie fan and would have dreamed of making movies, but I never thought it was possible. But Fruitvale Station was the thing that really sparked Fruitvale and really just seeing Ryan speak, watching his interviews on YouTube. That was the thing that made me feel like I can make movies as well.
No, that's awesome. No, great place to start from as well with Ryan Coogler. What a creative genius, to be fair. I mean, yeah, sort of tagging on from that as well. You've just released a new creative project, being Up in Smoke, which, as I understand it, is both a music album and a book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. I can't really think of many projects that have spanned multimedia in quite that way. So, what was sort of the inspiration behind that project and the story that it told?
Yeah. So the general concept for Up in Smoke came out of a conversation that I had with a young student in Chicago. She asked me, "How do we combat systemic oppression?" Right, in an auditorium full of kids, right, which is such a heavy question. And I'm standing here up on stage in this high school, and I don't know what to say. I'm kind of,
Yeah,
I'm kind of stumped, because it's a question I'm still trying to figure out, right? Or I'm trying to still answer that question. And so what it did for me is it helped me understand that kids are ready to have these type of talks. So even if you go back
Mhm.
to my children's book series, The Adventures of Yanni, right, which is that series I wrote when I was teaching, how I was putting these things in these books to help these kids understand these concepts is no different than Up in Smoke. You know what I mean? Like when she asked that question, it helped me. It really clued me in and helped me understand. Okay, they're ready to start to understand these themes and concepts. How do I explore this, and how do I help them digest it? And so that's where generally the idea of the thematic, question of Up in Smoke, and a lot of the things that I write, particularly on the prose side, really are born out of theme. I feel like with books is like, I don't know why, I just feel like you should have something to say when you're writing a book. And so for me, it was about, okay, how do we talk about revolution? How do we talk about activism in a way that young adults can digest and attach themselves to? So that's where it started. And then, of course, me thinking about, I write a lot of murder mysteries. So me thinking about, okay, activism, revolution, this needs to kick off with a protest, murder at a protest. You know what I mean? Like that's just, so
yeah.
you start to put those pieces together. and then it just grows from there. But the initial concept was born out of that conversation. And then as far as the album, being a huge mystery fan and loving, writing in a lot of different forms and mediums, I thought it'd be so cool. And Up in Smoke is dual perspective, dual POV, right? So it's Cooper and Monique, two
Okay.
friends who are trying to solve this crime for their own various reasons. I thought it'd be really cool to make a rap album from a third POV and have the album have clues to the murder in the book. It just seemed like something that
That's
would,
awesome.
yeah, it just seemed like a cool idea. It seemed like something you've never seen, never heard of, and it feels like something that would help like cut through, right? Like if when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, I'm interested in that." Whether they pick up the book and it's not their cup of tea, or whether they listen to the album and it's not, whatever, it at least piques your interest. And I feel like right now, on both sides, with kids, it's really hard to grab their attention. With all the distractions that they have, all the options that they have. So it's like, how do I put something out in the world that grabs their attention, that meets them where they're at? Me also writing for kids who come from the same place that I come from, understanding like the hold that hip hop has on them, the power that hip hop holds. You know what I mean? It's like, how can
Mhm.
I meet them where they're at? How can I do something that's exciting, fresh? All the things, and then just fucking cool.
No, it's really important stories that you're telling. And again, I think channeling a creative passion into actually doing something that's going to help people and going to, teach important lessons. I think that's such a powerful motive to lead with, I think that's really great.
Yeah,
And yeah,
thank you.
especially to do it the way that you're doing it as well, with so many different formats that you can take the story in. It's pretty genius.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Definitely a labor of love. At this point now, it's funny because I'd like to say I've done the hard part in creating these things, but the hard part is there's still a hill, right? They're still getting it into people's hands. They're still getting the art out there, getting people to tap in. Like that's also an uphill battle. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't doubt that it'll take off. Don't worry. It's like I think again when you got something creative, you got something original. That's how
Yeah.
things do well. I mean,
Yeah.
again, pivoting again to something completely different. We spoke briefly about this before we started the video. You announced yesterday and made it public that you have been writing for the upcoming GTA 6 game, which is another huge accomplishment. How does it feel to have worked on something so monumental? People are saying this is going to be the biggest game launch of all time. It's definitely the most anticipated game,
Yeah.
and so much of that is your work and that team you've worked with. How does that feel?
To be honest, it hasn't quite. I'm still kind of in it. You know what I mean? I'm still kind of in it. So it hasn't quite hit me yet, but I do understand that it's a huge opportunity. It's one of those type of things that is, to be honest, a little bit. I want to say once in a lifetime, but I'm sure there are people at Rockstar who have worked on many many of these. But but
Yeah,
but to your point though, this particular one feels like there's an anticipation around on this title that I haven't seen before, right? So it does feel like one of those things, particularly if you don't come from video games, right? Like if you've never worked in video games, it feels like one of those things that's like once in a lifetime, where to be a part of a cultural moment like this, right? So maybe twice, I don't know, in a lifetime, but it's I understand that it's a big deal. That's not lost on me. It's just I don't think, fully internalized it yet. To answer your question.
yeah. When you're still in it, it's kind of like, how do I process that this has happened when it hasn't fully happened yet? Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And then like we were kind of talking about earlier is like the fact that I can't really say much about it anyway. Like so it's like hard to process, but May 26th, I think, or maybe 27th, May 28th to 2026, just on the other side of the game coming out, I think maybe I'll have that watershed moment. It's one of those things, man. It's definitely different. It's unlike any place I've ever been. In a
yeah,
good way, in the best way. But yeah, yeah, excited for that one, man. It's
yeah.
coming next year.
Nah, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah,
So back to Up in Smoke for the album side of it. How
yeah,
would you say developing that album has developed you as a music creator? It's like, have you learned anything from making that album that's different to how you did things before?
absolutely, man. I think that's a really great question because this album. So before this, I had released three EPs, 5 tracks each, so 15 songs, right? And I was just kind of making music, rapping, backpack, hip hop, boom bap, just something fun to do. With
Hmm.
this one, because I knew the scale of the book and the markets that the book was going to be in, I needed to make sure that the album matched in like artistic integrity, right? Like I had to make sure that the album stood up against the book because I knew the book was going to be on such a big platform. And also it was just my first album in general, like making a full length album, LP. So a lot went into like theme work of the album and song concepts and being a writer, being like a narrative storyteller helps a lot on the music side because I'm doing things in the album, like callbacks and plants and payoffs and all and then even the structure of the album flows much like a film. Like there's this three acts. And you can barely, when you listen to the album, you can if you're really paying attention, you can I think clearly hear the tonal shifts in the album that kind of like mark the three acts, right? But yeah, it was a great exercise in storytelling, a great exercise in how to write songs, how to make albums. Because again, I learned a lot just through the process of developing it. I learned the importance, right, of those intangibles. It's not just about the bars or the beats, right? Like it's also
Yeah.
the messaging and and again theme and song concepts and how do these concepts build on one another so that the album has movement, right? Like so all of those things were things that I learned naturally going through the process, and things that I'm sure I could learn more, much more about, if I were able to work with other producers and stuff. But no, that's a great question, and I certainly have learned a lot on both ends about making music, but also it just helped me become a better writer overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting what you said about actually having messaging there and telling a story as well, because I think so many of the best musicians, all for their best songs, have a really great story to be told in their music. Again, immediately sprang to mind, I think, of like not necessarily the recent stuff, but Kanye West, for example. All
Yeah,
all of his best songs tell an incredible story.
yeah,
Again, not so much recently, but
yeah.
it's like I think music that actually can tell you something and actually, has that sort of build to it where you learn things. I think that is where the best music comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah, it comes from a place, a real place, and it resonates with a listener more because there's something that it sticks to your ribs, right? It's like food
Yeah,
that sticks to your ribs. When you look at even like the Kendrick and Drake whole battle, right? Like I think coming out of that,
fascinating.
yeah, it's very and the thing that made it so fascinating was all of the things that stuck, all of the pieces to pick apart and to digest and dissect, and that's the stuff that sticks to you, right? A great song, a great club record is a great club record, is great for the moment, but it doesn't actually necessarily stick to you. And so that's where I think all of that theme work and messaging comes in handy. It gives the art life.
No, absolutely. So, on your journey then to getting to where you are now, how has the reception around you been from the people that you've known? Has it always been a very supportive journey? Has everyone always told you, you can do this, you're doing the right move? Or have you ever had people that have said, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, man. I was making music at a young age. I started making music around, like rapping around 15. And at that time, up until stopped, until I got, I just was like, okay, I'm just going to become a teacher. Up until that time, it's not a lot of support, to be honest. You have people who support you for sure, your friends, you maybe go do shows and it's like, but you're really close friends. Everybody else, it's so fascinating to me because rappers are in my community, in Black culture, Black American culture, rappers at a level are like the most revered and respected. Like you got, rappers, athletes, they're the most revered and respected people, right?
Mhm.
But when you're trying to do it, when you're trying to get there, you're one of the most ridiculed. People kind
Yeah.
of look at it as lowbrow, or it's kind of looked at as like a try hard, or you don't really have anything going on. You know what I mean? It's looked at in a weird way. But then once you get there, it's like the most respected thing. You know what I mean? It is such an interesting phenomenon. But yeah, so for me, starting to be an artist at such a young age, I've endured that for a really long time. And even being out here in Los Angeles, I'll meet, got a lot of friends who are like actors or whatever. And some people use the word struggling. I just say like they're still, they're still up and coming, right? And they get really kind of down about it and about this type of journey of being an artist, because artists are just not, it's just not looked at as a very shiny thing until you're on the level. And I tell them like, it just doesn't bother me anymore because I've endured so many years of that. So anyway, to your question, not a ton of support throughout my journey, but certainly more recently, you can see people again, once it starts to become real and people feel, or even if people feel, even if it's not real, but you can make it look real, people start to feel like it's real for you. That's when they tend to come around and be proud, right? In a genuine way. But it just for whatever reason, that's just how it works.
Yeah, I can tell from your experience as well that you've taken that on board and sort of are trying to change the way that that's seen as well. From my understanding, you've sort of had this experience yourself, and then when other people have been going through the same thing, you've not done what people did to you, which I think is great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's all about uplifting people and trying to show support where you can. And that's what keeps people going. The support is what keeps people going.
On a somewhat similar note, then, how have you dealt with criticisms along the way and these shadows of doubt that people have put upon you? It's that have you dealt with it well? Did you ever have any run-ins with mental health problems that you've maybe had to jump over because of that?
Not really. I mean, if I were to run it, like any mental health problems for me is like today. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm doing a lot. The way I've always dealt with it, to be honest, bro, is just like digging harder. It's like a black
lock in.
mamba, which is Kobe Bryant. It's like a mamba mentality. Is like, okay, just go harder then. Like they're gonna see type of, you sometimes see these memes online of like how a villain is made or like people, the villain's origin story. But like that's really, it's like, okay, well, all right, I just have to show you then. So digging harder. That's really how I've always kind of dealt with it. Yeah.
No, it's a good way to as well. It's like channeling something negative towards something good is like
Yeah.
something not many people can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, awesome. No, glad to hear about that. That's nice to hear for a change. Because again, I've spoken to a lot of people who really have succumbed to it in some degree, and I think it's nice to have a bit of a breath of fresh air where it's like, no, someone's actually managed to
Yeah.
overcome it so quickly. Is there something completely different to ask about then? Us being student pages, we try and give advice to students that want to do the things that the people that we interview do. For your social media, then, how do you feel about social media as a concept? It's like, do you utilize it to push forward with your career? Are you kind of a bit negative about it? Because we get an interesting range of responses here.
Yeah, yeah. I think overall, I have a more, I guess you would say, negative view of social media. I do not like having to be on social media. My personality type is I don't like feeling controlled or feeling like I have to do it. Like I don't like feeling like I have to do a thing.
Yeah.
It just turns me off. And again, being an artist today is so frustrating that you have to not only be the artist, but you have to be like your marketing team and your content production team. Like people are asking so much of an artist. Oh, I guess you could say entrepreneurs too, right? Like anybody who's wanting to
Yeah.
push a brand, people are asking so much of them. I say artists in particular because an entrepreneur, that's to be expected. Like that's what you get into it for. There's going to be a lot asked of you. I think for an artist, is a little different, right? Like you don't get into artistry to be an entrepreneur necessarily. Like you get into it because you like making art. And I think it's because everybody now feels like they're an artist or an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to do their own track. It's hard to build teams of people because everybody thinks that they're supposed to be the guy or supposed to be the girl. It's like, no, I'm the one, right? I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the front facing brand, I'm the artist, whatever, right? Which is fine, sure. But then it creates this kind of dynamic where everybody's, at least again, if you're depending on what level you're at, you're on your own, trying to do your own thing because everybody's out on their own trying to do their own thing. And so there's a lot asked of you. And so for me, that's frustrating, right? Feeling like, okay, you have to be, and then, of course, in turn, then you have the companies, right, that empower artists. They're looking at metrics on social media, right, where it's like that's not a real metric of artistry or passion, or you know what I mean? Is all of these different kind of like nuances that I could talk for days about, but all of it really boils down to I don't like it. I don't like the idea of needing to be on social media. I don't like what social media does to people. I do think obviously there are some upside, right? Like if you can master it, great. And if it doesn't have, bother you in some of these negative ways, great, right? Because people have made fortunes, off of social media. So I think it's obviously has its upside. But for me, it's just even if I were to master social media and have it make my brand become, Tabitha Brown or any of these people who have just blown up all it still would frustrate me. Like I still would not I still wouldn't be a fan.
No, absolutely. I mean, good perspective, honestly. It's like I think you do need to keep a bit of a reality check when you're using social media because it can drive you up the bend. You did actually mention something there that I was going to bring up anyway, because I spoke recently to someone called S1E19 who
Hmm.
mentioned to me that in a lot of the creative industries like music, there's this almost war going on with everyone that you need to work with everyone kind of thinking that they are the person that's going to help you get to a place. But then there's another that manages a different sector and they think they're the person. What's your experience been with connections in the industry? It's like have you run into some of that or has yours been very collaborative?
Mine has been generally collaborative. It's interesting. I'm at a really unique place in my career because, I came out of film school in 2020, right? Where of course there's pandemic. And so, that's 5 years ago, right? In that time, I sold a few TV shows, none of which have been greenlit to go on air. I haven't directed my first feature. I'm basically like, I don't know where you would put me like basically, okay, take away the books, take away the music, like take away everything else. I think anybody else in my position in Hollywood would be considered what they call a baby writer, right?
Right.
Which is like basically a novice, right? Like somebody who's just, again, just not that removed from film school. What's interesting about me is that I also have 5 novels. I've sold 3 TV shows. I'm writing a video game. It's all of these other things. In Hollywood, I haven't really done so much, but in some of these other places I have. So I say that to say, basically, I don't have a good take yet on that necessarily because I just haven't navigated Hollywood that much. And film school is, of
Mm.
course, is collaborative. Like everybody's, we're made to collaborate. Like everybody's assigned a role. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you kind of do that role. So, but in general though, what I will say, because I have one thing that I have navigated for a long time is the music industry. And I can just, yeah, I'll echo kind of what that person said and what I said earlier is like, yeah, people tend to think, again, at a certain level that their idea is better or that they know the way more than you do or that they're more important or whatever it is. Like people, and I think it's because just everybody is trying to, and going back to your question about social media, I think, created a little bit of that, where everybody is like, "Oh, I can be the entertainer or fame or whatever is going on in people's brain." I don't want to speak for everybody, but I've noticed this. Like, it's hard to get people. Basically, it's hard to get people to galvanize around a single person or like a single vision sometimes because everybody has their own vision, which you can't be mad at. And what I always come back to is like, okay, for me, that just means I have to go harder and achieve certain things so that the people around can understand, oh, maybe they do have a vision. Maybe we should see where we can plug in on this train. You know what I mean? Because our train
Yeah.
is kind of stalled out. That's all it's about. It's like everybody thinks that they're doing the thing again, which is fine. Like I'm not saying it as like necessarily a bad thing. It's just that's a fact of the matter, right? Right. And so when you want to build a team and you want to get, okay, I need somebody, I need a camera guy, I need a social media manager. And then again, it's just about the level. At a certain level, you need all of these different things, and you need it to happen for little to no cost because there isn't any money coming in. And as an artist, you need to
Yeah.
be given your full time to the artistry, right? So again, I could talk for days about this type of stuff, but it's hard to get people to tap into that way and work so hard for a single vision because, and I think that also goes to leadership too, right? It's like you have to be the type of leader that gets the people around you to understand that like this is for all of us. Like we're all gonna win. Like this is not about just me. This is about building
Mm.
a machine. We're building a machine, and then once this takes off, we all win collectively, right? Like no matter who's the figurehead, we're building something special together, right? And I think so. It's two sides. It's both sides, right? Is the side of people not necessarily like feeling like they don't want to work for somebody else's vision, and then there's the side of whoever is really the most talented or whatever, like being just a great leader and getting people to understand that it's not just about me and not being egotistical and making sure the people around understand this is something that we're working on collectively. So you gotta have both sides. For me, I'm just getting to a place where I'm able to do that, where people are at least are starting to listen to me in a way that allows me to say, hey, let's build something together. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
have this vision, and I need people who are good at these other things so that we can build this collective machine.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
fascinating insight there, to be honest. It's like, again, I never really considered there were that many levels to it all. No, that's incredibly interesting. Again, more directed towards students here. For people that want to do the kinds of things that you do, because I understand there's probably a different angle to go at it for the writing, the
Mhm.
filmmaking, the music. But if you had to generalize, what sort of advice would you give to students that want to go into that sort of industry where there is this much competition, I suppose?
To be honest, man, I'm glad you asked that. What I would say is start building that team now in school. Like if I would have started this in undergrad, I think it would have been way easier. But I didn't yet know exactly what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. You know, if you're thinking about this now in undergrad in a real way, start building that team now because you can go to people in the cinema department and say, "Hey, I need a director." You can go to somebody in the marketing department and say, "Hey, I need," like there's all these kids around you who are learning the thing, and that's the time to be building, right? And y'all are in school, so the money's not as far as that's not really an issue. It's like it's not like you need a 9 to 5 to support your family and all it's like
Yeah.
this is the time to be doing it. I would definitely say start building your team now and just start working at whatever it is you're trying to do. Like just start now. Start like be thinking about that. Okay, I'm gonna need help. Like I can't do this alone. I should be tapping in with other like-minded people and figuring out what are all the pieces to the puzzle that we need to make this, to really complete the picture. And then yeah, and I would say just sharpen your craft. Like build your team, sharpen your craft, and keep going, man. And I think you'll end up in a good spot.
Do you know, I'm so glad you said that because the amount of people I know, because I do journalism, I went to a drama school. I know a lot of people that want to do things down that alley. I know so many people that have said they've got a concept for a TV show or like they've got an idea for a film or they want to do this, they want to do that. And the issue is that they always said, I'm going to wait to pitch it to some big producer or whatever, or oh, I'm going to write it first or whatever. It's always frustrated me because I've always said, I'm like, just make it.
Yeah,
It's like if you wait until you're top dog to make something, you're never going to get it made if you don't do something to kick it off first. So, yeah,
yeah,
fantastic advice that has always frustrated me to a
yeah,
stupid degree.
yeah. No,
So,
no.
yeah, there's too many people who wait.
It's too many people waiting, and it's so true. People think it's just gonna happen one day, and they'll just be on the top of the world. It doesn't. It just doesn't work like that, unless you have like extremely wealthy, connected parents. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work like that.
So I've got two final questions for you. These are some of the big dogs, I suppose. One being, if you had to pick one thing from everything you have done, what would you say has been your biggest challenge so far?
Man, to be honest, my biggest challenge is really just find like being the best like husband and father I could be. I got twin daughters who just turned 4. And so it's like doing all of these things in the midst of that, right? Like all of these things they're kind of like it's like any other job, right? Where it's like it's not brain surgery, which I feel like is extremely intense and like but writing the books or making the albums, like these are all things that I am just an artist and writer. It's time that goes into it. And luckily there's people around, right? Like you have your editor or you have your agent, like you have people that kind of help guide you and give you ideas and give you feedback. So I think I've been doing it enough now where it's not challenging in the way that it makes me
Yeah.
it's nothing to keep me up at night. So really it's just about doing all of that while still to your other question about mental health, having that work-life balance, like being there
Mhm.
with and for my family. Again, going to Ryan real quick, he talked about Sinners. One of the things that really, sparked Sinners for him was the idea that he was away working on all these movies and his uncle died while he was he was somewhere, I think he was either in Philly or out here in LA, and his uncle died back home. And he's realizing that he's missing all of this time with family, right? In the midst of
Yeah.
doing all of this work. So that's the thing that, if anything, keeps me up is that it's like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm still, spending time with not just my wife and daughters, but my family back home in DC. I want to make sure that I'm still cultivating my tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great thing if you're going to find anything challenging. I think that's a really deep-seated personal thing to find, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
The final thing then from us really is what are you working on currently? Again, we're aware that you've got the album, you've got the book, you've got
Mhm.
GTA going on for next year. But
Mhm.
right now, what are you working on? Have you got anything to plug?
Man, nothing to plug really is because, there's things I can't there are other things, other properties that I can't mention. But, I'm working on a graphic novel. I'll say that. I think is gonna be amazing when we can announce that one. Working on the next couple novels. I just sent one of my next novels to my editor at Macmillan to see what they think. Yeah, man, I'm constantly just writing stuff. Still working on it. Like I said, I got a couple TV shows. It's nothing to plug because there's no immediate action right now. There's no everything's kind of like in development. But working on my first feature film in development for that. There's a lot going on. I always say when I get this question, I always say just tap in with me on the like just follow the journey. Like there's always something. But other than Up in Smoke, there's nothing right now to really plug. Go out, listen to the album. The album can be heard anywhere music is heard, right? Apple, Spotify. Title, YouTube, SoundCloud, wherever. And then the book can be purchased, of course, wherever books are sold. So yeah, man, go support Up in Smoke and reach out to me on the socials. Let me know what you think.
No, that's awesome. And hey, we'll circle back with you next year with any luck to see how you're getting on and actually be able to talk about so many of the things that you're working on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you ever so much for your time.
Absolutely. Likewise, my man. Appreciate you. Take care.